We are the Blender community, where business and media mix. All right, welcome to the show, Paul Eza. It's so great to see you again. I know you're fresh off a flight to see Disney in Paris and with your wife. That must have been so much fun, but I'm so grateful that you have the time to chat with me today. And as I mentioned to my audience a moment ago, we met at Famous Faces and Funnies too, but I didn't say how we met. So you had a table set up there with your comics, your signed art cover prints, your talisman coins that were for sale. So first of all, how did that come about? And then what were your hopes and expectations for setting up the table at that local comic shop?
Again, Famous Faces and Funnies 2 is a phenomenal local shop here in Boynton Beach. And one of the first times I went in, I noticed they had a full, tall shelf full of local independent created comics. And so I wanted to go in and see if they were interested in carrying my first comic, which is Heroes and Zeros, that came out last year. And the owner of the shop, Jimmy, is phenomenal and a huge supporter of indie comics. And he said, "Sure, come on, bring some in. We'll put them up on the shelves." And he did that. And he mentioned to me that at some point, if I wanted to come in and do a store signing, an in-store signing, just let him know and we'll set it up. So I told him at that point, "Hey, I've got one comic out. I'm not really that confident in coming in and sitting there and with just the one thing to offer people."
Facing the public.
Right. I mean, I'm a writer. I'm not, if you've met a lot of writers by nature, most of us are very shy and awkward. I'm no exception to that. So, but once I had my second comic out, which was issue 1 of The Olympian that came out earlier this year, it's like, okay, I think I can do a few hours, friendly environment, people who are already coming in to do some comic shopping. Let's go. What's the worst that'll happen? I won't sell anything, right? I'll
Yeah.
just sit there for a few hours and people watch.
Yeah.
So talked to Jimmy about it. We got it, picked a date and time, came on out, set up, and as far as expectations, I didn't really have many.
Mhm.
Because I haven't done it before. I have no idea what the local interest in independent comics is. And of course, I'm not all that confident in myself as a salesman. I tend to, when I start going, you'll see this probably a couple of times today, I get going and I tend to stumble over my words a lot. Um, so it's awkward. It's like I said, it can be very awkward. So, so it's something that I'm learning to do and learning to be better at, but, I figured why not go? I'm really what I am confident in is these comics I'm making. And I know if somebody loves comic books, if they actually pick it up and give it a shot and give it a read, I think people are going to enjoy it. So I
Yeah.
brought them out. We had some great art, like you said. We made prints we had a main cover and 2 variant covers for each issue. And then we had one special print that we offered as part of the Kickstarter campaign. So we did prints of each cover as well, and the special print. And we had some other merchandise that went along as rewards from the Kickstarter campaigns that we had some overstock from. And those were there at the table as well.
Yeah.
And so, and that was about it. So we set up, and I think Jordan was one of the first people to actually come over and talk with me. He, yeah, I could see him walking towards the back and he kind of stopped in his tracks and looked over and was like looking at the stuff that I had there.
Yeah.
And, asked me what my stuff was about.
Yeah, let me tell you, a comic book and if you boil it down to its basic essence, is a beautiful marriage between the writing and the artwork. And that artwork, of course, starts on the cover. And so your covers drew us both right in. And I know you say you're not like a natural born salesman, but I think that's actually a good thing because what you were able to do is just talk about yourself and how you wrote them and why you wrote them and where the stories came from and where the name of your main character came from and for Olympians, and you'll be able to obviously all of that is on the episode that that Jordan
Right.
interviewed you for,
Yes.
which will be out next week. But it was lovely just to kind of get the raw reality of why you're doing it and feel that passion right at our fingertips and be able to get to meet you. So don't get too in your head about it. I think as long as you stick to, I mean, as cliched as it sounds, is like stick to your why, right? But I think as long as you stick to your why and keep bringing that as the forefront of the conversation, you're gonna be just fine. So, what were the results of it? You know, I know you said you had limited expectations, but what were the results?
As far as the actual results, it was a lot better than I anticipated, frankly. Um, you know, I'd have to go back and look at all the numbers, but I believe I sold more at that one 4-hour block than I have in either of the two conventions I've been to this year. And now those were 1-day conventions, but they were each a longer portion of the day, like 6 to 8 hours
Sure,
long.
sure.
Um, and so, and I think part of that too is competition. You know, when you're at the convention, you're one of, you know, if even at the small shows, you're one of many independent creators who are there who are trying to catch people's attention, and people have limited budgets, most of them, as far as
Hmm.
how much they're going to be able to spend when they go to a show. And
Oh my
that's great
God, Jordan's
because
heading to another convention this week, and I'm already like figuring out what budget I can provide for him to buy stuff.
but you know like but it's great because there is enough to go around and there's enough
Yeah,
audience for everybody.
yeah, yeah.
And that's one of the
And one
ways
of
I'm sorry, that's one of the ways I try and approach this is like, you know, I'm fortunate to be in a position where I have a day job. I have income. I'm very stable and I'm not like trying to do this as a hustle to pay my next month's bills. If
right.
I were, I would not have succeeded in that. But you know, if I can use that privilege for anything, to me, that's like, okay, who else can I help? Let's make great things together and get all of us noticed. And
Yeah.
maybe one of these things hits big and it ends up being great for all of us.
Yeah, I think your idea of all kinds of partnerships is really spot on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Of course, you mentioned the start with Jimmy, and one of the other results of that, you know, yesterday we were recording this on a Thursday. Yesterday is a Wednesday, and if for anyone's listening who's unfamiliar, Wednesday is typically the new drop day for new issues of comic books. So we're always at that store on a Wednesday, and I love being able to see your two comic books on that wall now at Famous Faces and Funnies, and none of that would have happened if you hadn't taken a chance and said, "Hey, Jimmy, you know, here's an idea I have." So you mentioned, so that was definitely a great way for you to get the word out about your books, but you've also mentioned attending comic conventions. What else have you been able to do to get the word out about your comics?
So besides just doing those two small conventions, I've got one more coming up in November. You just try and be as active as possible on social media. That
Hmm.
seems to be the number one thing that people who have succeeded in this space will tell you is you just have to be kind of relentless and don't worry about being annoying because you know, for every time you post, you if you post 5 times a day, you're like, "Oh my god, I'm just gonna be bashing my friends' heads over with this stuff. I don't wanna do that. That's really annoying. I would hate it if someone did that to me." But we all know how the algorithms work and all the social medias, or we don't actually know how they work, but we know that they are there.
Yeah, you
And
can
I
make
know for a
educated
fact
guesses.
and think about, like, how many of your friends, specific friends' posts do you actually see? And if you post 5 times, you might see 1 or so they might see 1 or 2 of them. So that's why I
Right.
say you've gotta be that relentless, and it's not something I've been good at or consistent with. Um, there's certainly people who are better at it than I am. Um, so that's one step. I do have a newsletter that I've started that is a monthly newsletter, through the website acorncomics.com. People can sign up there, or, when we run the Kickstarter campaigns, there's always a question at the end when they send out the survey. Would you like to be added to our our uh, our list? Would you like to be added to the newsletter? And usually I put an option of either yes slash already subscribed, yes
Mhm,
or
mhm.
already subscribed, because a lot of times people may not know, but um, it's not going to let me put in duplicate emails. You're not going to get two
Right,
copies.
that's actually
So
really smart. I wanna highlight that for a second because a lot of people, yeah, if they're asked if they wanna sign up for something, they may assume that they already are, not realizing that they're not, and just skip right by it and say no. For this, that allows you to capture them just in case they don't know. So putting that as an option of yes slash I'm already subscribed means that they'll be added if they're not added. So that's a really smart
it,
idea.
yeah, because and that was something that hit me a couple of times when I was filling out surveys myself. And people, I think the natural inclination is to break that down as three options: yes, no,
Mhm,
or already on.
mhm, mhm.
But I get a lot of newsletters because there are a lot of creators I like to follow and see what they're doing. I don't necessarily know when I'm filling out those surveys, did I sign up for this one? Have I seen this? Or am I
Yeah.
just thinking of a social media post that they put up? Um, so I thought if I combine those two, that kind of takes the guesswork out for people, um, and
Yeah.
lets me put it on there if they weren't already signed
Yeah,
up.
that's really, really smart. And so you also, I know you do stuff on YouTube, but before we get to your trailers, which I love, kind of sticking with the partnership theme or, working with others theme and stuff like that. You mentioned Kickstarter, which
Mhm.
you have a Kickstarter, but you also spotlight other people's Kickstarters. So what's the thought process behind that and how do you do that?
So one of the reasons I do that is, like, indie comics creators. It's a very big but very small community, if that makes sense. Like there's a ton
Yeah.
of us out there, but most people who are active know each other or have interacted with each other, or at least familiar from one thing or another. Um, and when I started, had the wheels churning several years ago of, well, if I want to, if because originally I wasn't sure if Heroes and Zeros would, if I wanted to just pitch that to publishers and try and get in front of an actual publisher to pick it up, or if I wanted to self-publish. And ultimately, of course, I ended up creating Acorn Comics and self-publishing through that.
Hmm.
Um, but it's one of those things where it's just common sense. If I want people to support me and help spread the word when I have a project out there, I mean, it's just kind of common courtesy to do the same thing. And
Yeah.
so I kind of want to do that. I want to in some ways hold myself accountable. Um, I try and do that weekly. I did. You kind of alluded to YouTube. I At the beginning of this year, I thought, oh, why don't I just do this as a video on YouTube every week? And I very quickly learned that that was not a thing I was going to be able to keep up with. Um, between the script, the editing, the filming,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Even though it was only going to be like a 60-second clip each week, the work that went into it was just not something I was able to keep up with.
It
So
takes a lot, and we're definitely gonna be diving into those details here in a minute. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I very quickly switched back to the format I had been using, which is just, again, going on the various social media platforms and trying to highlight 3, occasionally 4, um, projects that were funding at that time.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and usually ones that I'm backing or would like to back, but the fact of the matter is, again, goes back to this: nobody has an unlimited budget. Nobody can possibly back every campaign they would like to back. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
but you can still support it by sharing the posts, sharing the links, talking about it when you see something come up about it, and
Yeah.
using whatever reach you have to kind of help those folks get in front of a different set of eyes.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for
and
sure.
so, and besides that, I just I like doing it. I like seeing these things succeed because they're really cool stories, and there's a lot of really great comics that are coming out that, and again, I want to be careful how I phrase this.
Hmm.
Um, without going through the kind of filter of the big publishers, which is typically DC, Marvel, to a certain extent, Image, and
Hmm.
then get into some of the kind of somewhat smaller publishers when you talk about like Boom or Dynamite. Um, Mad Cave has been making big strides lately. There's a bunch of others. Um, but any type of large publisher like that, you're going to have editorial coming in and sometimes changing what you want to do or changing what your vision is. Everyone should have an editor. I'm not saying editors aren't a good thing to have. We have editors on our comics. They are invaluable.
Hmm.
And there's a great reason why, the writer or the artist on Batman might not know that DC has this huge event coming up, or might not know what the specifics are that are going to be happening in Nightwing or in Batgirl.
Right.
And they need to be able to, if they have any kind of crossover or any kind of big event coming up that's going to go through those different titles, editorial is essential because they're going to have to kind of shape
Sure.
stories. And of course, there's other considerations, like we don't want our company to be painted in this particular light or that particular light, and that's of course very valid as well. But when you're getting it from I'll call it the micro publishers, whether it's the self
Hmm.
publishers or the very small companies like Acorn, you don't have that extra filter on it. And
Right.
while sometimes that, yeah, hey, there might be a couple of mistakes that slip through that you wouldn't expect to slip through in a bigger comic, you're also getting that unfiltered vision of what the creators had in mind for that story.
Hmm.
And that can be magical.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as many of those as I can help in any small way become reality, I want to do it.
Yeah, of course, of course. And then you've also done a couple of your own trailer videos on that are on YouTube,
Yes.
and so there's a lot of different things that you've done and that you started to kind of put some content together. We've mentioned your website, Instagram, obviously the prints that you sell in real life, your trailers on YouTube, and you've also been a podcast on not just on this podcast, but you've been a guest on other podcasts. And if
Yes.
anyone wants to check those out, in the spirit of helping out my fellow creators, you can find them at acorncomics.com/media. So you can find your interviews there as well.
And
But
I should say,
yeah,
since I am the entirety of the Acorn Comics staff, um, I'm a little behind at updating that page. So there are a couple that I have not yet put up there because honestly, I always forget that I have to update that page.
yeah,
But
listen, I totally feel you. I totally feel you. So that's actually a phenomenal segue to the next part of this conversation, because I know that you studied advertising in your undergraduate career in college,
as
but
many lifetimes.
yeah, but you have the same content creation pain points that so many of us have. Like the time to do it, the money to create things can come into play. So it's a lot. But
Yeah.
when it comes to time to do it yourself, I mean, you do have that full-time job. You're an attorney, you're a mediator, you're a litigator. You also are a phenomenal parent to a wonderful young son who I look forward to meeting one day, and who's your main character is an Olympian is named for. But plus, there's obviously the side hustle of creating these comics and nurturing their growth and managing the Kickstarter and blah, 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 like all the things, right? So, how can anyone expect you to have time to promote the content? Like what you were saying with doing the Kickstarter videos, it takes time to script it, to record it, to edit it. Like all of that takes time. So can you describe I mean, I may have just done it, but can you describe your own pain point of having the time to do promotional content for your own stuff?
Well, it's I think twofold.
Mhm.
Time is obviously one of them, and that's a big one. And obviously, I prefer if I have spare time from all the other parts of life, I would much rather spend it writing another comic. I've
Mhm.
got probably other than, we've got Heroes and Zeros 2 coming out soon. We've got issue 2 of the Olympian that's in the works already. And I'm focusing on those two series primarily to get the first runs of those two finished before I
Mhm.
move on to one of the other projects. But I've got um, at least a start on 2 or 3 others that I think are very promising that I really want to dig into at some point. Um, but besides the time, there's the skills.
Mhm.
And, obviously when I was in college, mm, I don't know if video conferencing exists, but it sure wasn't something like this. Podcasting was not video podcasting. Um,
Right.
I think the word podcast might not have even been invented when I was in college. So there was no training on any of this. There was none of that. So there's certain skills I had as far as a design aesthetic, as far as how to put things together that I still carry with me. And I think that has served me well enough putting together the trailers that you mentioned.
Mhm.
And that's another creative process. So that's kind of fun. Um, getting those together. And just seeing how it works and how I want to put it together and finding the right music and cutting the music at the right spots and all that kind of stuff. That I actually kind of enjoy. Um, but I had to learn how to use that software.
Right.
Was not something I knew how to do, and luckily it was relatively easy software. I just used the iMovie on my that comes with my Mac, and if I learned how to use, probably I'm sure there's better software out there that would allow me to do more of the things that I maybe have in my head for some of these, but um, none that I know how to use, and
Yeah.
none of it that is free that is specifically better. So I'm not necessarily willing to pay money at this point to try to see if I can make something a little bit better. I might get to that point at some stage, but for now, I'm happy with what I've been putting out for the trailers, so I'm good with that. Um, Getting attention on social media is another skill entirely, and it
Mhm.
is one
Mhm.
that I have yet to crack the code. Um, I've I was thinking, are do you know Gail Simone?
Yes.
You know who Gail is? Okay.
Mhm.
Aside from being one of the absolute best writers in comics, she is a 100% world class social media troll. And I say that in a loving way. She is not never mean, never anything, but she will just the amount of times she will post something about some comic or popular property
Yeah.
just has some one or two things very intentionally wrong just to see who bites.
Right.
And
Right. Right. It's a strategy.
anyone who has ever followed her is just sitting here waiting for it because it's hilarious. You She has had people trying to explain her own comics to her. Um, like very clearly not recognizing who she is or
Right.
like, trying to explain the characters like Deadpool or Domino or any of the others to her. Like she hasn't
Yeah.
written enough to fill an omnibus on any of those characters. Um, as she God, what did she do a couple of days ago, 1 or 2 days ago? She just posted something about the Jack Reacher show,
Mhm.
which, in fairness, I've never watched. Um, but she posted something about it, just like, but the actor is just a little too big. I think he's supposed to be a little shorter, like Tom Cruise.
And in fact, I have very limited knowledge of that as well. But the thing that I've heard the most about it is the critique that how is Tom Cruise cast for this role because he's supposed to be this big, huge, hulking
This
man.
hulking, and of course Gail knows that. That's the whole bit. And you get some people coming in with all the confidence of the, middle-aged keyboard warrior
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
like, dude, come on. You, you've been on these internets for as long as they've existed, if you're as old as I am, and you don't know when that's bait.
Yeah, yeah.
You just
Listen,
have to be so right about about things.
yeah, so my son actually and I were having this conversation the other day about rage bait, and it's real and it works, and it just is about getting engagement because as soon as people engage with whatever your content is on whatever platform, it gets served up to their, the seconds and the thirds and everybody else that they know. And so there's definitely a strategy, but it's so difficult sometimes to stay on top of what's going to work, what's new. One of the latest things that I've seen on like shorts and reels and things is actually it's just really just posts on Twitter of all places. It's just a picture that's 99% of the time it's generated from AI of a little puppy dog, right? And the question is, oh, what would you name him? And that's it. That's the whole post. But it's person after person after person under there saying all the, name suggestions and why, and then talking about their dog and da da da. And so there's
People do love
there's
talking about their
constant
animals.
change. Yeah, there's constant change as to how to work the algorithm, what's going to work, what's going to hit. And being able to stay up on all of that technology, not only just the tools of how to make it, what are all the buttons and features and things that you can do, but then brainstorming how to stand out from the crowd, having different campaigns for different purposes and whatnot. It can be a lot. So you've mentioned, yes, time is definitely a big factor. Staying up on things is another big factor. And then also the money, because like you mentioned the technology, like having the cash flow to either A, pay someone who is an expert at social media to do things for you, or B, to just have the software that you're paying for yourself to actually be at a upgraded level that can do all the things. It can be really, really daunting. And I think those are the three main pain points that most content creators have. It's a time issue, it's a money issue, and then it's a technology like learning curve issue. And
Right.
so what you're saying is extremely, extremely familiar. And one of the ways that people are staying on top of things and doing them is foregoing they're kind of hopping, skipping, and jumping over some of those issues by using something you and I have talked about in the past and feel very similar on, and that's AI. I just mentioned these AI puppy dogs and whatnot, but on one of our recent calls, we discovered that we have some of the same concerns. In fact, my last episode was with a man named Ulrich Musset. He is the founder of Marbleism. It's this one type of AI that creates like AI assistants for you and stuff. But what are some of your I know if you don't mind sharing your opinions or concerns, your thoughts on you using AI potentially to do some of this content creation and help getting the word out. How do you feel about just the idea of it?
All right. Well, I think a better idea is if I could just get Gail Simone to take over my social media for one day. I would have enough followers that it wouldn't be a problem anymore. Um, maybe like I can, like Deadpool kills the Marvel universe, like that series. Gail Simone
Yeah,
takes over social media. Um, I think
which is a
that would be
great
good.
series, by the
But
way. There's three different parts. I've read all of them.
as you and I discussed, I am vehemently anti any kind of generative AI.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of layers to that and why I feel that way. Um, and but what it comes down to, of course, this is a huge issue in any kind of publishing or any kind of entertainment, um, but particularly with comic books, because like you mentioned, the art and the words all work together in such harmony to create this, beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And part of that and part of what makes it so good is the collaboration between different people. Because you get different viewpoints and different takes on things that you might not get otherwise. Um, AI, the models that are out there, I'm not going to mince words on this. They are plagiarism machines.
Mm-hmm.
They do nothing but steal copyrighted works from people who've not given them permission to do so and repurpose them into something that they claim is new, but is just a mashup of other people's work. It's there to try and take away work from, it boggles my mind how little people actually value artists. And I say
Right.
this as somebody, writers are artists. Yes, yes, yes. I'm talking about visual artists, people who can actually draw a picture that tells a story.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and people are like, oh, that's wonderful. That's so great. You must be rich. You want me to pay what for that? Like,
Right. Right.
and there's absolutely no actual appreciation for the people who are doing this work and creating these beautiful things.
Right, because you're not
Nothing.
just paying
Yeah.
for the one painting, you're paying for all of their hours and years of studying, of practicing, of all the supplies that it took to make various versions or what have you.
Yes.
It's a lot, and people just take it for granted. You're
And
right.
I have a lot of friends and a lot of creators I might not have met, but that I greatly admire, who, if you look through some of the lawsuits that have been making their ways through the courts, um, they uh, they've been stolen from, and that
Yeah,
doesn't sit
yeah,
well by me. Is you're stealing their work to try and put them out of work because
yeah.
people, and we all know how the big corporations work. If at some point there stops being, or people get tired of it or whatever, the taboo starts to go away, um, they'll use that stuff in a heartbeat. Of course, by then the companies that make it won't make it quite as cost effective as it is now, but by that point, all the artists who could compete with it will be out of the picture.
Out of business and not able to
So
afford to
which
defend
I see
themselves.
as that's the ultimate goal of the generative AI companies, is to get a stranglehold on that. Which of course, if isn't new art for them to steal, where's the output going to come from?
Right,
You
right.
know,
It reminds me a little bit of Scarlett Johansson and what she recently went through. And she's done a lot of work, but what she's probably best known for is playing Black Widow in the MCU movies. And I forget the company, but they were basically doing an AI voice model, and they reached out to her, say, "Hey, can we use your voice?" And she said no, and they did it anyway. And so imagine how that would feel to
yeah.
have essentially your voice stolen from you. I can imagine a little bit because when I was in 8th grade, my school used to do this thing where you could submit art to be included in their calendar that they would put out every year. And I don't know if submitted anything that year or not, but I remember turning the pages of the calendar when it finally came out and seeing this, big photo for one of the months and being like, wait a minute, that looks extremely familiar. Oh, not a photo, a drawing. Like, that looks really familiar. And I realized I had drawn it. I had drawn it, but somebody else had submitted it under his name. And so
Oh
the
no.
feeling that happens when you get your work stolen from you, so it can be devastating and very, very frustrating because once it's out there, then it's just like this catch-up game of awareness to try to let people know that no, this is really you. It's one thing for you to say, hey, can you help me Google? Can you help me figure out what this definition is or what what made this person's work significant. It's another thing entirely to say, hey, AI, can you please write my college essay or a comic book in the style of so and so? And so sometimes there's a fine line, and sometimes there's a big bold line. And I
Right.
think when it comes to creating something, and I say something similar to this on this episode with Ulrich, if you get something back from AI and it couldn't have come from your own brain, then it shouldn't come from you. It's one thing to use it as a tool to help you get some words out, but if it couldn't have come from you, it shouldn't come from you. And I think that's even triple, quadruple fold when it comes to something that's very creative, like drawing or writing a book. So I
And I
completely
can,
understand how you feel.
and let me put it this way, like I can theoretically envision uses of that technology that I don't think are, ethically bad.
Compromise,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, right. But with the technology in the state it is in, with the technology, I mean, you've got AI execs in front of Congress in court, essentially saying, if you don't let us steal whatever we want to steal, we won't have a product. To which
Right,
I say,
right.
good. You should, if you have to steal to have it, you shouldn't have it.
Wait,
Then
wait, not to cut you off, but did you see that there was a court case where this guy actually had an AI generated lawyer, and the judge was not having it. He's like, no, 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 we are not doing an AI
yes,
generated
yeah,
lawyer.
absolutely, yes. Um,
Unbelievable. Go ahead.
it really is. It's ridiculous how some of this stuff goes. And again, and getting it, because this does overlap with my day job a little bit. But I think you and I are similar age, so you probably
Hmm.
remember the Napster lawsuits.
Yes. Oh, yes, I do. And
And
Bear Share and a couple other things. Yeah, they're around
to
that time.
me,
Mm-hmm.
this is no different than that. The
Mm-hmm.
argument
Mm-hmm.
the companies made was nobody is actually taking this. It's just a whole bunch of people that are putting their own stuff up there that they've already purchased and bought, and allowing other people to take bits and pieces of it and mash it back together into the exact same thing.
Yeah,
And
essentially,
you
if
can
anyone's not familiar, it was essentially what you could do with Napster is you could upload your own, the CD that you bought and have the different songs up there, and so could everybody else across the world. And what you could also do is then search for a song that you really wanted, and instead of going to the store and buying the single or buying the album, you could just download it from Napster and for
absolutely
free.
free. As a
Mhm.
college
Mhm.
student, boy, did I love that. Um,
I'm not gonna lie either. I loved it. I mean, there were times when you'd have to sit there and this is really dating us, but like it would take like an hour or an hour and a half to download something, but it was worth it because it was free. And we didn't really think about the impact that was
no,
having on the artists, but once people brought it up, it did make us think through that a little bit
like
more and say, yeah.
it makes sense because artists should be able to survive on their art. If you're good enough,
Mm-hmm.
you should be able to make a living. If you want great art, you have to be able to pay the artists so they can keep making great art.
Right, right. And just as a reminder for everybody, next week we're going to have a bonus episode for you that features an interview about Paul's comics. And actually, it's being done not by myself, but by the total comic geek in the house, my son Jordan. And when I was listening back to that, there was a fun fact that I thought. Actually, no, it wasn't even when you were listening back to it. It was something you did on our guest intake form. That's where I found it. It was a fun fact that I thought, ooh, I want to hear more about this. And not sure if I don't think it was covered in the interview with Jordan. So you mentioned as a fun fact that you are a character in both DC Comics and the Star Wars universe. Like, what's that about?
Yeah, so I'll start with the DC Comics. Although, you know, my wife will argue about this one, and in fairness, she's right, but I still the very first appearance um was at one point, I don't remember which issue of Batman this was,
Mhm.
But one of our good friends, Tom King, was writing Batman for several years, and he had somebody as a patient in Gotham General Hospital, and there was an announcement that went over. Someone said, "Somebody call neurology. Somebody get Dr. Eza down here."
Ah!
Of course, my wife being a neurologist, that's who he was referencing.
Ah!
But that's not her name. She never changed
Look
her
at
name.
you trying to steal your wife's shine. Look at
So-
you.
but but the name's in there. So um,
I love it.
and then the second time in Tom's run, there was an issue. It was issue 75 of Tom King's Batman run, and the artist on that one was another friend of ours, Mitch Garrett's, who had reached out to us and said, "Hey, I just need some reference photos of the two of you together looking scared."
Hmm.
Like, okay, okay.
It's an
And
interesting
this,
request.
as another kind of side fun fact, this was when Constance was pregnant with our son, and
Mhm.
we were just about to make the like official to the world announcement. Like our families
Mm.
knew, but not everybody knew.
Yeah.
And we did consider for a minute asking Mitch to draw her pregnant as our way of announcing it. But then we realized that this was probably going to be a very dark thing. And so there's a panel towards the back of issue 75 where you see myself and Constance in the background as Victor Zsasz walks by, most likely about to kill us. Uh,
Ah,
so that part's not shown. So that's just
hence the look scared.
right, right.
That's
So
awesome. And what about
that's
the
how
Star Wars thing?
the Star Wars thing goes back to something I know you and I have discussed a little bit in our calls. The Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser. There's this immersive theater. And it kills me to say this, but this is how it got to be known publicly, was the Star Wars Hotel. That's not what it was. But that's how most people know it. It was the Star Wars Hotel at Disney World. It
Okay.
was a 2-day fully immersive experience where you basically get dropped in the middle of a Star Wars adventure. Um, and that we have been told by multiple sources through Disney, Lucas, etc. The events on the Galactic Star Cruiser are Star Wars canon. So we, as characters who attended in character on the ship, um,
It counts.
it counts. You know what? It counts. I I am a Star Wars character. You can't tell me otherwise.
I love it so much. And one other thing I'd like you to share real quick is you have a Kickstarter campaign coming up at hzcomic.com. That's for Heroes and Zeros, I assume.
It
Tell us a
is.
little bit about that.
Hzcomic.com. It's issue 2 of Heroes and Zeros. This is again the first issue, and this issue both 48 pages of story, no ads. And again, if for anyone who hasn't read it yet, you can get a copy on our website. If you have a Global Comics subscription, Acorn Comics is on Global Comics, so you can read it there. Or if you're just getting caught up to it and you want to order an extra copy of issue 1 when you support issue 2 on the Kickstarter, you can do that too. We still do have enough stock. And shoot, if there's that many folks ordering it, then I'll just do another print run. I'll make
There you
sure we
go.
have enough. Um, so I'll be more than happy to do it. So yes, it's for issue 2 of Heroes and Zeros. It's our futuristic murder mystery. We call it X-Men meets Scooby-Doo in the future. And it's a world where most people now have superpowers, and the ones who don't are kind of the outcasts. So they're known as zeros for, zero abilities.
Yeah.
And 3 zeros get thrust into investigating and trying to solve the murder of the most powerful man in the world, and trying to clear the name of the man who is being framed for that murder. while some very powerful people, figuratively and literally, are trying to stop them from uncovering the truth. So that's where the adventure comes from. Definitely underdog story and against all odds type of story.
Yeah, and I've read the first issue and I love the groundwork that you've laid for it. I love the characters, and I can't wait to read number 2. So I do encourage anybody who is even, a comic book fan, interested in what comic books are about, if you remember reading Scooby-Doo as a kid, like, whatever the reason, like, or just wanna, support our awesome guest here, Paul Eza, definitely go to hzcomics.com, or hzcomic, no S, hzcomic.com, and throw some support to his Kickstarter. So other than,
Well, I
oh,
should say, Jemmy, before I should say, right now it's in
yeah,
pre-launch, so it's
okay.
not up there yet. It launches on October 7th. So, but
Well,
what
they
you
can
can do,
sign up for your newsletter. I'm assuming your
what
newsletter will announce when it's
you can
actually
sign up for
live?
the newsletter at acorncomics.com, but you can also go to hccomic.com. You can go there now and sign up to follow the campaign. And then when the campaign launches, the minute it launches, you're going to get an email that says, "This is live. Go support it."
Awesome, awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so then other than the bonus episode that we have coming out next week where you're interviewed by Jordan about your comic books, and other than hccomic.com where people can go and support you, sign up for your Kickstarter, how else can people find, follow, and support you?
All right. So I am Acorn Comics on Threads, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky. It is under my it's EZA, so my last name ESQ, like a lawyer, is the
Okay.
username, because I haven't figured out how to change that yet.
Okay.
When I opened the account, I didn't know if I was going to be using it for law, for comics, for what.
Right,
It's
right.
definitely shifted towards comics. Um, so the name on the account is Acorn Comics, but the handle is at EZAESQ on Blue Sky. Those are the ones that I primarily use. Obviously, it's Acorn Comics on YouTube. I'm not sure the exact handle on that. It might be a
Yeah.
period or in there. That one might be Acorn Comics 19. Um, you know,
Regardless, we will
look
we
for
will
Acorn
definitely put
Comics.
links. Yeah.
You'll see it. It's a
And we'll put
cute
links in
little
the show
Acorn
notes to
logo,
everything.
and that's where we're at. So please come follow us.
Awesome.
Come say hi. We love to interact.
Awesome. Well, I said it, gosh, I don't even remember what episode it was. So I was talking about networking and always being ready to network because you never know what awesome opportunities are going to avail themselves to you. And
Like
I was
somebody
so
coming up to
glad
you at
that
a
I was
comic book
able and
shop.
ready and yeah, to meet you at the shop and we had a great conversation. Paul, thank you so much for all of your time today. It's been really, really fantastic speaking with
Thank you
you.
so much for having me on, Jemmy, and for the
We are the Blender community, where business and media mix.